Pledge allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, I'd like to open the December 2nd planning board meeting. And I don't have an agenda in front of me, but
Right there, it's pretty easy
it's
to
up there.
memorize.
Okay. First up is, by the way, we're being recorded and sent out live probably at the same time. Call to order is then Corey Ridge Estates endorse Corey Ridge Mylar.
Yep, so the appeal was dismissed and we didn't endorse the Mylar last meeting, so we just need one more signature and I've got the pen here.
Whose was it?
I think we need Annie's signature and
Well, we've got,
whose signature is
Jim.
who's on here?
Yeah, Jim and Mark. So we could get Bob.
That's Mark.
I believe so. That looks like an admin and
Maybe somebody's board.
Oh, a lot of discussion
Thank
on
you.
that topic.
While we're doing
It's an
that,
easy one.
next is our 2026 annual town meeting warrants. It disappeared.
It should be on your iPads. So I just want to give some background on the process. I know you all are familiar, but just for the sake of anyone who may be listening or watching, the planning board tonight is going to talk about zoning amendments, and then tomorrow we'll submit the finalized list to the select board to request that a public hearing is opened. And then that will happen at their next meeting, so it'll be 2 weeks from yesterday that they will consider that. And then tonight, we'll decide on when the public hearing should be held. So there are two possible dates. We can consider January 13th and January 27th. We can go into February if necessary, but the way the paper is published and how many, you have to give 14 days prior, and when the paper's published, we had to go out into January for this.
So January 13th, which is a planning board meeting. And what was the other day?
The 27th is the next
27th.
option?
Yeah. They both
So-
work for me.
I know it's the holidays, so I don't know if anyone's going to be out during that month,
Either one.
either one.
Either one.
You available?
Yep.
Okay.
Clear for the rest of the year on this.
So what's your choice?
The 13th works great.
Okay.
Can we get a motion to have recommend to the select board that the public hearing is on January 13th?
I move that we recommend to the select board that the zoning amendment public hearing be held at 6 p.m. on January 13th.
So why is it that we have to recommend to them? Can we just hold our own public hearing for them?
No, we have to request that the,
Well, they have to send it back to us.
Right.
After we give it to them.
right.
So what date are we gonna give it to them?
Well, we'll give them what was the question again?
When are we sending it to the select board?
We'll send it to the select board on, well, let's give it a little bit more time than tomorrow. Well, we can send it to them tomorrow. I can take any amendments that any changes to this tonight and get that incorporated. Although Sean wanted to provide some additional comment, so.
So I guess.
We could, I can do it really any time as long as it meets the statutory requirements, so, it has to be within,
What's your concern,
The-
Jim, in terms of
Well,
when
the-
it goes to the select board?
Well, it has to do with when the public hearing is. So, and then the other question is, I think the one of these amendments that we might want public input before we send it to the select board
Mhm.
is
Scenic roads?
the scenic road too. And so, and I think we talked about that before,
Yeah,
that
so-
maybe we want to have an open discussion in one
Okay.
of our meetings
yeah, so,
about that before we write it up and
Right.
send it.
right. So it threw me for a loop for a minute. So we can, still plan on January 13th for the public hearing. We have plenty of time to do that.
And then after the public hearing, we still have to send it
Select board.
to the
Right,
select board.
right.
So presumably after
If-
we had
if
a
there's
chance
any- If there's any amendments to it.
to. Right.
Right. There we go. Yes.
And then that has to be within a certain time frame of town meeting, right?
It's 180 days.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we're okay
So we
there.
have time.
Yeah, we have
can-
time.
We can schedule that with the
Right,
next meeting.
right.
Okay.
So there's a motion I made to send it to the select board.
We don't need to send it to the select board yet, actually, so,
Oh,
um,
we can just have the public meeting?
We're just gonna set the public meeting.
Oh.
right, yeah.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, the motion was to set the public meeting for January 13th.
Right.
Yes.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So, I think the date, you said December 4th is the discussion.
Right, so this isn't a formal public hearing. It's just us discussing what should be on the docket for the public hearing.
On December 4th.
Yeah, which is tonight.
No, there's a
No,
second.
tonight's the second.
Oh, sorry, my date's, sorry.
Yeah, I just want to make sure you weren't calling us back in on Thursday.
Sorry.
He's got another thing on Thursday, that's what
I do have something else on Thursday that must have been on my mind.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
We can discuss it at the Climate Resilience Committee.
Okay,
Okay, well, let's talk about the amendments. I'm sorry. For getting those dates mixed up. So the first one we're going to talk about is a small change in the table of uses, which is in section 5 of the zoning bylaw. As it relates to dog kennels, there was an act to increase kennel safety that was signed last year, which is nicknamed Ollie's Law. Changed kennel licensing requirements from 3 to 4 dogs, and so it was requested that we change from Matt Armendo in the Board of Health to change our bylaw from requiring a special permit from the Board of Appeals for the keeping of more than 4 dogs, but less than 7, in accordance so that we're consistent with what's required with state licensing.
so if you have 4 dogs and they're all pregnant and have a litter of 6, you have 3 months to get rid of most of them? Because it says 3 months or older.
Yes, but that's not proposed to be, there's not, what is proposed to be changed is just the number of adult dogs being kept.
Do you need a motion on each of these separate?
No, we don't need motions on any of these. I just
Okay.
wanted to get the board's feedback on
Yeah,
these.
my feeling on it, so how does, because I had this exact situation, it was one of my problems with Matt, because I have 4 dogs. I have 2 addresses, actually there's 6 at the location.
Hmm.
So my problem was, I had no problem going getting a kennel license, but they wanted, you have to go to the ZBA to get the license. So that was $500 to go to the ZBA to get a license for my kennel. Because then he said, well, and he's got to come and inspect it.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I have a pretty nice setup for my dogs, but they're actually pets and they live in my house. You know, we have outside kennel runs. I have an acre fenced in the back for them.
Mhm.
Actually, in the spring, I'm going to build a whole nother building for the kennels. But I was under the assumption we could go to the state and get a 25 dog license. Well, how does that affect with this? If I get a license from the state for 25 dogs, what's the Board of Health have to do with me?
Mm,
I'm actually a farm.
I'm not familiar with the licensing requirements for large number of dogs. Just this is to change it, the requirement of keeping more than 3 dogs used to require a permit at the
And
Board
what
of
he was
Appeals,
also
and now it
doing
would be changed to
Because he said
4.
you couldn't just, if you had 4 dogs, that was what it was. If you had 4 dogs, you couldn't register the dogs. You had to have a kennel license.
Yeah.
So if you have 25 dogs, how does it, do I still got to go to the ZBA to get a license, to get my state license for 25 dogs if I'm a farm?
If you're a farm, I don't know, but the way this would read, that if you had 25 dogs, you'd have to go to the Board of Appeals for that.
To the Board of Appeals or the state?
That's what the
Or the,
table of uses requires a special permit at the Board of Appeals for the keeping of more than
Well, now what
4
about
dogs,
what about the
as
right to
opposed to
farm
what
bylaw?
was.
That
3.
says zoning, we can't be affected by zoning.
I don't know if that particular situation would be exempt under the agricultural.
Because I mean, I can see this when you're in like the tight areas in the north end and you got the small lots and all the other stuff, but like me, I have 16 acres.
I think it's worth a question to somebody. Maybe Matt would be able to tell you what he would do.
Because I was all set to go get the kennel license until they said I had to pay $500 to ask for it. I'm like, I even was all right when I'm coming and inspecting my house, but
Sure.
then at that point I told my wife, I said, I'm not getting it, just register 3 of my dogs. So I
Mhm.
guess I was breaking the law on the 3rd dog.
So
fourth
this
dog.
request is from Matt to change this.
Right. So that what the town requires for licensing is consistent with what the state
So,
requires for licensing.
so this applies to only people that have 5 and 6 dogs?
Right.
Only 5 or 6?
Yeah, more than 4,
Only
less than
5 or
7.
6? No, it doesn't, if you have less than 4, it doesn't apply. If you have more than 7,
7 or more.
Right.
7 or more goes to the state?
it says more than 4 and less than 7. So what
5 or
fits
6.
between those 2 numbers is 5 and 6. So
I
it applies
think-
only people that have 5 and 6 dogs.
This is pretty straightforward and not controversial to me. It liberalizes it a little bit. But I think the question that Manny raised, if this comes up at town meeting, we ought to be able to answer the question, what happens if I have more than 7 dogs? Who do I have to vote for? We should just be able to answer it, but it's not really relevant to this. But someone will ask it, and we should be able to answer it then.
That'd be a good thing to push by Sean too, because Sean has a lot of dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think Matt Armando knows this because he made this proposal, so he must understand, you know, what happens when you have 7 or more. But, we should get that information from him.
Yeah, especially since I'm not allowed to talk to him, so you're good.
So if you,
I have to go through him.
if you go by this, do you just license the kennel, you don't have to license the dogs?
I think you have to always license dogs,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Even if you have 25?
Yeah.
Well, I think the whole idea of the kennel license is you don't put individual licenses on the dogs later. Like a lot of our dogs, we chip them, you know, so and that, they actually scan for that now too.
Well, what happened, we've got a couple of kennels, big, commercial kennels here in town. They have a license to operate as a kennel.
Like the one across?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they don't have to have each dog. Well, they have their own requirements. When you want to bring your dog there, they want it vaccinated
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that kind of thing. Maybe they ask to make sure that it has a license too, I don't know. But that's up to the owner of the dog to do.
Yeah, and if you bring it to the vet, then the vet might have 10 dogs in there overnight. Is that a kennel? So anyway, okay, let's not get stuck.
All right, there are two, in section 3, the definitions of the zoning bylaw, there are two definitions that relate to building height, and they do conflict with one another. This was a request from the town administrator, Jim Hartnett, to strike definition number 1 up here, which is the vertical dimension from the lowest point of the building, structure, or wall exposed above the ground surface to the highest point of the roof, parapet wall, or uppermost part, or chimneys, vents, or utility service structures shall not be included in the measurement of the vertical dimensions. He asked for this one to be kept and to strike definition number 2, which is the height is described as the vertical distance between the highest point of the roof and the average elevation of the naturally existing mean grade, the measurements taken at the corners of the lot prior to any excavation, leveling, grading, or filling at the building foundation, exclusive of chimneys, air shafts, ventilators, vents, lightning rods, or similar items which may be of the height required for proper operation or use. Building height applies to all buildings and/or structures. The building shall remain in compliance with the height requirement after final grading. This second definition is problematic because if you have a lot that is situated on a bluff, for example, and it's 30 feet above sea level, but then part of your lot is at 1 or 2 feet above sea level, you take the average of that and then add the town's height of 40 feet, you're going to have a very, probably unreasonably low building height after you do that calculation. So the town administrator requested that the simpler definition is what's kept in the zoning bylaw.
Well, there's a problem with that. I mean, you don't want to just have number 1 because it doesn't define height above ground properly. This number 2, in fact, does describe, the circumstances, how you measure height above the ground, except that I would not use this average of the corners of the lot. What you normally do is you have a site plan with the contours, you locate the footprint of the building on that, and you take the average height of the building above the ground, above those natural contours around the perimeter of the building.
Yeah,
So-
for instance, my lot, which John was explaining, I go from sea level to probably 50 feet up on River Road.
Yeah.
And my house isn't that tall, but it would not fit. I mean,
Well, it's a maximum height restriction right now, minimum.
it's a maximum.
Yeah, so you're just, because you're on an elevation, it's easier for you to comply.
So Mark, you're saying that it would be better to actually take this definition and just modify it slightly, and you'd have a more accurate approach for the building inspector to measure this?
Yes, I would strike the parentheses, the measurements taken at the corners of the lot, and say the measurements taken at the corners of the building.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want that measured off the natural grade, and you want it prior to, as it says, excavation or leveling, grading. Because I've seen cases where they, build a house up and above grade, and then they come back with 4, 5, 6 feet of fill all around it.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, oh no, okay, so from that fill, they measure up and say, oh yeah, we're 30 feet, 35, whatever.
Yeah, I would think that you have to do it that way though, because, I have a problem with the naturally existing average grade. Because the naturally existing grade is not necessarily the proposed finished grade, because you get Title V regulations, you get all that other stuff that govern the height of the lot. The distance above the water table for the basement floor. I don't know if Westport has one, but Dartmouth has one. You have to be like 1.5 foot above the water table, so that's gonna set the height of the house on that. So I think you gotta say, maybe say like 50 feet around the perimeter of the house, because you're gonna have to grade for water runoff, all the stuff that they've been building retention ponds on the side of the house. This could all cause a lot of problems.
John?
I prefer number 1, although I do have a question on it in terms of definition. And the reason I prefer number 1 is that it may be at some point in the future will either require, or insurance companies will require, or the homeowner will just want to elevate his building. And our building's on piles, so it's a certain amount above. And so you build a building under one set of rules and measure the height to make sure it conforms. And then if there's sea level rise and you want to elevate that building another 5 feet or 8 feet, you don't want to put the person in a position where, well, I've got to elevate the building, but I've got to lop off, the attic or the roof, because I'm measuring height from the top of the building to the ground as opposed to what the actual building height is. And so it's, what do you do with buildings that are on pilings, or buildings that will need to be on pilings in order to allow storm surge? And I think number 1 doesn't penalize that situation, although I think you need a definition in there that the building, the bottom of the building is the plate,
Yeah, like
not the bottom of the pilings.
Like when you got a foundation, like a regular foundation on a regular lot, you're usually like 8 inches to the weather.
Mm-hmm.
When he's talking next to the water, I don't know, what is it now? Is it still elevation 18 for your first floor? So you're already starting off at elevation 18,
Most
even if you're at
locations,
4.
I think, for the velocities,
Yeah, those
are
are-
16 or 17 feet. In other areas, it might be 15 feet, but it's.
So that one,
It's
You also
not-
have to have 2 feet of freeboard now, too, with the new building code.
2 feet of freeboard on
Yeah.
top of that.
Yeah.
So,
for regular foundation to the weather, 2 feet is code?
Yep.
Well, maybe there's an exception for buildings on pilings, but frankly, I think when you see these buildings on pilings in a community where all the other houses are sitting down at the beach, and then there's this one house sticking way up, I don't think that's attractive at all. But you could make an exception. But generally speaking, if your site is not impacted by flood levels, then I think you've got to measure off the height of the existing grade.
I don't know, I would never be able to build my house.
Mm.
I got a 10-foot wall in the front, and my septic's actually a foot higher.
So,
And a
so do
full
we
walkout
need to
back.
alter number one to make it explicit about houses that are built in the floodplain? You can't use the ground level?
Yeah, I think we have a couple different issues here. One is one thing that John has brought up, but then we also have these competing definitions for height that we need to
Well,
either go in one,
we shouldn't have conflicting definitions in the
Right.
bylaw.
Right.
Number one. And then, you know, what Mark's description is pretty much what most zoning bylaws look like. The average grade around the building. Some of them allow that to be the finished grade, some of them around the natural contours. But I think but measuring the four corners of the lot, you know, your lot's a good example. River Road those are all, those lots that have the big driveways going up on towards Old Harbor. You know, none of them would fit into the second definition. Right, they couldn't build houses. So I think the four corners of the lot stuff should go away. And I think maybe leaving it some ambiguity in the first one, but also taking John's point of if you are within a flood hazard area, there's an exception for compliance with the FEMA standards or something. So that, and if we look at in the total land area, it's a relatively small portion of the total land area of the town that's is in that flood risk area. So I think, you know, number one, eliminating the conflict, and then if we use the first definition but provide some exceptions, and then just let, you know, something reasonable. But I agree. I mean, you can look at you know, that little stub of West Beach Road, you know, as you go over to you know, over to Gooseberry, you can sort of see the history of the FEMA flood storage. You know, you've got houses that sit on the beach. You've got a house that's on, you know, a 4-foot pile. Then you've got a house that's on a 15-foot pile.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you think, you know, if we keep, you know, expanding the velocity zone, you know, and these are side-by-side houses. You get all of these different interpretations as someone rebuilt.
So I guess the question is, first question is, do we need a building height restriction? And if we do, why is that we need it? And what is it achieving? And third, if you're going to build on 15-foot piles and have 2 feet of freeboard, and then go 35 feet on top of that, you're up to 52 feet. Do we want 52-foot structures?
Well, the freeboard would be in the 15, in the pile itself. It wouldn't be additional to that.
Well, 50 feet or 52 feet, it
Right.
doesn't matter. I mean, so do we want 50-foot structures along the beach, or do we want to make it lower for that? You know, if you have to go on pilings, then you can go higher, but you can't go to 50 feet.
You know, or you go on pilings and you're restricted to 1 story or 1.5 stories or
Right.
something.
That's
With a flat
what I'm
roof.
asking.
With a flat roof or something. I don't know. I think we should be careful about, because these flood the flood risk codes, as we've said, they keep increasing, and there's the probability that the regulations for how many feet you have to be above the flood zone will be increased. And we could end up with some very, very unattractive situations, I think. That's my own
Yes,
personal view.
no, I think that's,
Well, that's why I'm asking the question. Should we have a different metric for not using the ground as a determination? when it's
I think
in a flood
there's also another avenue for relief when we're talking about structures that may need to have the additional piling constructed to raise the structure out of the velocity zone. I think if they're existing structures, they could go to the Zoning Board of Appeals and request that relief. Whereas if you just allow it more generally, you could have new build structures that are then in that sort of scenario that you're talking about.
I think I'd make the point again that Bob's, I'm sure, right that this is a minority of houses, but some of them are on pilings where they would want to be elevated higher, and others may be buildings that aren't on pilings, but in order to save the building, someone wants to put it on pilings to raise it up. And the building's been designed, it's been built, probably has a gable roof, and if you're at maximum and you raise the piling 5 feet, and now you're 5 feet over, you're going to cut the attic and it's going to turn into a gambrel roof. And it reminds me of a fishing boat in Menimsha that quits a strider. It was 75 feet long, and the state came out with a rule saying if you're 72 feet or under, you only have to pay attention to state law. So the guy just cut 3 foot off the bow, and it looks ridiculous, but he did it because not a height restriction, but a length restriction. I need to get under that. And so you could have the situation, we're going to spend a vacation down on an island off of Florida where everything's 3 stories and everything's on pilings, and everything got wrecked in Hurricane Ian. They're existing buildings, they've been there 40 years. They're going to increase the height of the pilings. And if you say, well, now you got to take the peaked roof and lower it by 5 feet, why? First of all, it's going to be ugly. Secondly, it's why would you do that? You've got 2 things that are competing with each other. One, to get out of the way of the water, and the other is you want, I guess the reason to answer Jim's question about why we have a height requirement has something to do with aesthetics.
Yeah, I think. So there could be a difference, John, between buildings that have to be retrofitted and buildings that are built new.
yes.
And I think that it just goes back to another question. Should we have, it's not germane to this, but should we have a lot coverage bylaw? If we have one building down in the harbor where they knocked a perfectly nice house down and have been building this glass rectangle for 3 years now, and they're not done. But it seems to cover 80% of the lot. I don't know where they have a septic system. And, it's really not fair to the neighbors whose former ocean view is now looking at the back of a hotel. So,
Indoor septic system, they're the rage now.
Are there?
Yeah. Everyone will have it.
Is that another code for a swimming pool?
So, anyway, I think perhaps we can work on number one.
And I think,
Incorporate the-
I think, the idea, I think there's something to be gained out of saying if you have an existing building in the flood hazard area that has to be raised, then you don't have to tear your building apart. You can jack your building up. But building fresh, I think, also you can get to the idea of, listen, if you build anew, first of all, I think, we should be discouraging people from building in the floodplain. And if they build anew, and they buy a greenfield lot and build anew, then you have to be cognizant of the overall height. So they may in fact be a story and a half building with a flat roof.
Yeah,
Jim,
I would agree with that.
When you said definition number one, were you actually referring to number two, the one where you take the corners of the building
Yeah, the corners of the
and
building.
then
That's
stick with that one and
Okay.
then, okay, I just wanted to make sure.
I think that, as to the issue of why do you want to have a height restriction, or regulation, it gets to the whole issue of trying to maintain the character, the historically agrarian character, which were farmhouses, which before these building codes came into effect, of course, were all on the ground, so you never had any
Right.
tall structures. The tallest structure would be a silo or something.
Right.
And that's another thing I meant to ask, does this apply to a tower? If somebody, does the tower have to, is that restricted to I would think.
It would, yeah, it apply, in the definition, it says it applies to all buildings and structures.
So then, okay.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Chimneys, vents, and utility services shall not be included.
Right.
That's in item 1. But yeah, tower would be then.
yeah. But anyway, the point is that I've seen driving on River Road, I think there's an old, smaller cabin house sitting at grade, and then next to it, there's a larger house that was built up on pilings. And it's this is that juxtaposition, which kind of, it is not a good way to, if we're trying to maintain a kind of character, a more rural character to our town. So there is, all I'm saying is it's a tricky situation. We need to find some way to accommodate certain exceptions, but not allowing the town to suddenly start sprouting buildings of all different heights everywhere as we get more dense.
Right. And so the issues of the floodplains are coming up. There's a lot of that. But to answer your question before, why are we allowing these structures on pilings so high? It's because of the floodplain law. If we don't require that, nobody in town will be able to get flood insurance.
Oh, no, I understand that. The question is then, how much higher above the pilings do you want
Okay.
those houses to grow?
Right.
Do you want them to be 2.5 stories, 35 feet above the pilings, or would you be more restrictive so that they have to build essentially a 1.5 story building above sort of a Cape style house?
Yeah, so I guess the exception would be for retrofitting. Sounds like there's some consensus around if there's a retrofit of an existing building in a flood hazard area, the pilings will not be factored into the height calculation.
Right, it's an existing house.
Okay.
I think, Michael, I know you're gonna do a great job taking all of these various comments and putting it into a paragraph. And I wish you the best of luck on it. And the one thing I would also hope is that it stays as simple as possible and as short as possible. So we're not laying out every single eventuality and exception, which turns into a 4-page rule that started as a 1 paragraph.
Sure.
You might want to look, I'm sure you have looked at it already, but like that floodplain elevation, the way they call it out on that, and see how they characterize it. It might be living space or whatever they call it.
Mm-hmm.
That's
You-
probably the better way to do it.
You mean like in the residential building code?
Yeah.
Okay.
So 100 words or less.
I'm even confused now on that 2-foot freeboard. I mean, is that's something that just came out in the new code?
I believe so, yes.
I mean, how's that? Like, you know, you get it's like my apartment buildings. They're handicap accessible. You know, we got to come right to the top of the foundation and get inside the first floor. And you got 10,000 square foot building.
Yeah.
And you got all these other restraints all the way around you. How do you can't put a 2-foot foundation on that. It's impossible.
Well, we shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel.
Unless you
I'm
do
sure
the
other
brick
towns,
facade.
Other towns, Dartmouth, and be interesting to see how
Mm-hmm.
their bylaws are written regarding height.
Sure. So we do have some more.
Mattapoisett, some of the other coastal towns.
Yeah, I'll take a look and see what other coastal towns do.
I just seen something today on not to change the subject, but the constructive approval. I guess they just had one in Fairhaven too, that same kind of thing happened to them.
So we do have some additional floodplain discussion, although this is coming from the Department of Conservation Resources, and the town right now is being audited by DCR for its application of the model floodplain bylaw, the Mass Model Floodplain Bylaw. So as a part of this, they reviewed our bylaw for consistency with the Massachusetts Model Floodplain Bylaw, and they gave us a couple of findings that we need to correct. This is, as Jim had noted, we have to make these changes in order for the town to have access to flood insurance. And most of these amendments are more technical in nature when it comes to references in the code. So, for example, when you're talking about new construction, there's a section in here that they struck out, and they're referencing one of their technical manuals in the brackets there. So that's what that's referring to. And in the special flood hazard area, oh, I forgot to edit one of these, but the special flood hazard area is, they took out some of the, in the definition, some of the references to zones that we don't have in Westport. So you'll see this consistently throughout these edits.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I mentioned this to Michael earlier today. I don't have any objections with this. I think for purposes of the public hearing on January 13th, and eventually the town meeting, if we had a map of all these zones floodplain, people are likely to read this and say, well, am I in it or not? And maybe they already know that, maybe they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're not sure which zone they're in, so if we provided a map, I think it would be helpful in terms of how people at a public meeting
Yep.
react to this.
So when you say they're doing an audit of our bylaw, are they also doing an audit of how Ralph has interfaced with applicants with regard to this bylaw?
Yes, they're doing that as well as with the Conservation Commission. They requested files from both departments. They provided them a list of a number of different building permits and Concom reviews. I don't know if they've selected any to review them in detail. That was the last action, was the Building Department and Conservation Commission forwarding that information.
I mean, these, I looked at these this afternoon, or this morning, I guess, and they look mostly ministerial to me. You know, that they're, strike this word, make this date, those kinds of things. But the thing that was sort of curious was how did this become the responsibility of the DCR? And I thought, like, you know, like they don't regulate anything, and then suddenly they become the auditors or something. They don't regulate that. It just seemed strange.
I think it's because they're the interface for communities with the National Flood Insurance Program. So if we ever have any technical requests of how do I review this particular building permit, they have specialists who work with coastal communities, and I don't know how the history of how they became, you know, how that became housed with them, but that's how it came up, is yeah, just asking questions about permitting and stuff, and then they asked for our zoning bylaw to review that. Okay, so this next one, it's just a changing a date from June 6th, 2021 to July, which is when the Bristol County flood insurance study became effective. This next one is just striking the location of where FEMA Region 1 Risk Analysis Branch Chief is located, as well as the Massachusetts NFIP State Coordinator offices might change, so strike that from the bylaw. Again, this is what I referenced earlier. The NFIP coordinator recommended, or is asked that we strike the floodplain zones that aren't present in Westport, so it's only referencing the ones that are applicable to the town. This is kind of this same story with those two references. They also asked that we add in some additional text to be compliant with the model floodplain bylaw. So I'll read this one since it's a little bit longer. In zones AE along water courses that have a regulatory floodway designated on the town's firm encroachments are prohibited, including fill, new construction, substantial improvements, and other development within the adopted regulatory floodway, unless it has been demonstrated through hydrologic and hydraulic analyses performed in accordance with standard engineering practice that the proposed encroachment would not result in any increase in flood levels within the community during the occurrence of the base flood discharge. So basically what this is saying is that if there's fill or new development in one of these regulatory floodways, the flood, when it does flood, the flood levels are not going to increase from that development.
I don't have a problem with this, other than the way they've structured the sentence grammatically is kind of odd. You know, along water courses that have regulatory floodway are prohibited. Or I'm trying to figure out what's along water courses that have a regulatory floodway designated on the town's firm encroachment. Should there be a comma there? Encroachments are prohibited? Is
Yeah,
that what it's saying?
the encroachments are,
Prohibited.
yeah,
Then put a comma after
They are
firm.
prohibited unless you've done a hydraulic and hydrologic
right.
analysis.
But I think if you added a comma after firm, it would make that sentence a little easier to read. Encroachments are prohibited. Follow me?
Mm-hmm.
Just put a comma after firm.
I will check with them to make sure that's
Yeah.
okay,
Oh,
because
got it.
if you noticed in one of the
Yeah.
previous slides,
Yeah.
they did add in some quotations. So
Yeah. All right.
because a lot hinges on this. I mean,
Yeah.
we joke, but
Right.
it is important
Yeah.
because it involves people's flood insurance. So I'll just check.
Yeah.
This would be known as the Bullard Amendment.
Okay, so on the accessory dwelling units, this is back just because due to the way the Attorney General's office struck struck some of the language that was approved at town meeting last year. The bylaws didn't quite make sense grammatically, and so I just wanted to fix that so it reads appropriately. So, for example, with the way it was, this was struck, was that it left that a staircase must, to the extent possible, be enclosed and not change the general appearance of a house. Kind of doesn't really make sense because what we're really referring to here is the principal dwelling. So I just wanted to make sure this language was switched over and it's consistent that within that section we're referring to principal dwellings and not a house or anything like that. So
Do you want
I think it reads a little bit better this way.
You want it to be contextual with the
Right.
house, the design of the house? So if the
Well-
house is 21st century modern, then the exterior staircase is whatever that would be.
Right.
Or if it's a colonial style house, it would be a colonial style external staircase. I don't know how you do these things, but
Yeah, I mean, on a regular house, you got your means of egress, and one of them's a deck off the back that's not enclosed.
So would it be easier to say, instead of the principal dwelling, just the building?
That's
We should, we need to reference
A dwelling unit?
the principal, the dwelling that has been built on that property, which then allows you to develop an accessory dwelling unit.
Okay.
So before, you could just call it a house because that's the only thing that was there. Now, we have an accessory dwelling, which is why this, so if you've
Right.
got an accessory dwelling, then you need to have a
I
primary
mean,
dwelling.
yeah.
And
Yes.
you can have an accessory dwelling to things that aren't a house. You could have it as an accessory to a triple decker. You could have it accessory to an apartment building. A house is not really an accurate
Yeah,
term to put there.
good.
Right, and then
Is that
scenic.
something that changed in this new thing? Because
Yeah, so we got notice from the Attorney General's office that our zoning bylaws were approved. And then there was a bit of a pause on our accessory dwelling unit review because I think because so many communities passed bylaws in the past year on accessory dwelling units that they had some delays in reviewing it. And so they struck language that really was just something that I think we had just looked over. It was really just an editing mistake that had reference to single family in here. So you can't restrict an accessory dwelling unit to single family units anymore. As I said, you can have, all different types of units that dwelling units that an accessory dwelling is an accessory to. So that's what the Attorney General's office had struck from our bylaw, was the reference to single family.
so I don't actually understand this. Is this So if you have a freestanding accessory dwelling and it needs a staircase, an external staircase to access it, this statement that it shall not change the general appearance of the principal residence.
Mm-hmm.
What shall not change the general appearance? The staircase or the accessible dwelling?
The staircase.
Accessory
So
dwelling.
the staircase must,
The staircase is attached to the accessory dwelling, not the principal dwelling. Right?
well, if it's a,
Yes.
Well, if the accessory dwelling unit is within the main building,
right,
then it would be attached to the principal dwelling
so this,
building. But I think your point is correct, because what if you need a staircase outside of the ADU? Does it have to be in context with the ADU? Because the ADU is supposed to be in context with the principal dwelling. Or does it have to be in context with the main dwelling, even though the ADU may be a different style?
Well, do we somewhere define, we do say, as you just said, Jim, that there's some statement that the ADU must be compatible with or in general, have the general appearance of the principal dwelling? Is that?
That's what item C says. Item A, I don't know what item B is. Item A says the staircase has to.
Yeah, okay.
Item C says the ADU itself has to be consistent with the primary dwelling unit. So
That's-
you've
that's
got
a-
both of those
Yeah,
covered.
yeah, so
That's an attached ADU only.
mhm.
It doesn't
Yeah.
say anything about a detached.
Right.
Because a detached could be a repurposed garage, which may
Right,
not look
right.
like a house.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, I think C is clear to me, anyway, I'm just still, I think A is a little muddled in terms of what we're applying this restriction to be, that it cannot change the general appearance of the principal dwelling.
I think A can really only apply to attached units.
Right.
You know, if you had a freestanding unit and you needed to get to the second floor, you'd have an internal staircase.
Mhm.
I think they're trying to get rid of fire escapes, metal fire escapes that are not enclosed and not consistent.
Well, yeah, so I think if you're right, Bob and Jim, if you just, could we just insert the word "an attached accessory dwelling"? If an external staircase is needed to reach an attached accessory dwelling unit,
Sure.
this staircase, then I think it makes.
Yeah, it makes
more
sense.
All right.
You mind taking, oh, never mind. Okay, on to scenic roads. This is something that we've talked about at the last, over the last couple of months, actually, at a couple of different planning board meetings to consider a town bylaw that's submitted to the select board from the planning board. And so the purpose of this would be to preserve historic resources and rural character and defined corridors. And we'll talk about the corridors at the end of the bylaw. We have to get through some of the administrative stuff up front. And the only thing that the scenic roads enabling legislation allows a board or committee to do is to have a public hearing for removal of trees or stone walls within the road layout. So the purpose I've drafted for this is that the town of Westport adopts the provisions. Okay, there's an edit in there that needs to be done. The provisions of this bylaw to maintain the scenic beauty, aesthetic value, and historic significance of certain roads in the town of Westport by designating them as scenic roads. Scenic roads must not be altered by any person, organization, or agency in any way that requires the cutting or removal of trees or the removal, rebuilding, or destruction of stone walls or portions thereof without adherence to the applicable procedures and without written consent of the planning board unless expressly exempt under the scenic roads bylaw. And the authority is that these regulations are adopted in accordance with Mass General Law 40, Section 15C.
I think this is good. You explained to me when I suggested we include things like stone bridges and guardrails, that the only thing we're allowed to do under the enabling legislation is trees and stone walls. So if that's the only thing we're allowed to do, then I'm all for this. I do have a question in the section on definitions where it defines a tree, because we can regulate the removal of trees. Any deciduous plant having a diameter of 9 inches or more is measured 4 feet above. Is that required in the enabling legislation, that definition?
It's not, and I think that's something that's worthy of discussion with the
So
board.
the concern I expressed to Michael earlier today was, you know, when you plant a tree, it's usually 3 inches in diameter. And if someone wants to take down a tree and it's 8 inches in diameter, he's going to say, I'm going to take it down right now because I don't want to get it to 9 inches when it's protected. So I'm going to cut down everything that's under 9 inches. And so I think that, you know, that 9-inch number should be significantly lower, because you don't want an incentive. I hope there's a desire for people to take down trees. And then it's not a huge number, but they're a good number in the public way that are less than 9, but still substantial trees.
So, I mean, should we let anybody cut anything that's in the public way?
Well, otherwise you'd have to have a public hearing for removing even like a small sapling or something like that.
I mean, weren't we supposed to have like a
Couldn't we
tree warden
enable-
and all that stuff?
You can have a tree warden administer some of this, and some communities have some more complex definitions and regulations in it. I think for our purposes, we probably want to keep it a little more simple because we don't have a tree warden.
I think
We
highway's
should-
supposed to be tree warden.
I don't think they are,
But
we need a tree warden, because one dead tree totaled my car,
one,
and there are others just waiting.
there are a number of people who are clearing the brush away from stone walls and revealing stone walls, which is kind of nice. You don't want to prohibit the cutting of the vines and brush that are obstructing the stone walls, but trees are a different matter.
Well, we could quibble about the dimension of the trees.
Did you look into what Dartmouth has on this?
Yes, I looked into a number of different bylaws in South Coast as well as in the Boston area.
Well, yeah.
Like Lexington and Concord, they have a very robust scenic roads bylaw, as you might imagine. But I looked locally as well.
Dartmouth had a plan on Donald Perry, and that's why Dartmouth pretty much looks the way it is. He was a tree guy. I mean, I've planted trailer truckloads of trees, street trees in Dartmouth because of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And right up from the 80s, and none of them are 9 inches yet. So that's a lot of years.
Yeah, that's my point.
So,
But they're beautiful.
Yeah.
even
Well,
though
I mean,
they're less than
you start
9.
looking at them. Some of the ones I did in the early '90s, and it's a nice sized street tree.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But they're also planting that type of tree that grows that way on the side of the road.
Yeah, it kind of runs the gamut what some communities do. I was seeing anywhere between 6 and 12 inches, so I just went in the middle for the purposes of having the discussion.
So if we had a tree warden, could we palm off some of our decisions to the tree warden? Or would the tree warden be the one to go out and inspect when somebody applies to cut one down?
I think staff could go out, I mean, any town staff could go out and do an inspection, but it's the board that actually has to have the hearing for this.
We planted a birch tree 13 years ago, and it's 3 inches, maybe 4, but it's 40 feet tall. I mean, you don't want somebody cutting down a tree like that.
Mhm.
We planted a sourwood when we built our house. And the thing is probably like that. I don't know if it's 9 inches or 8 inches, but it's like 60 feet high.
Yeah. I'd suggest we take that 9 inches down to 3, but
Well, isn't it, I always think of these, this historic, maintain the historic character of the tree, the roadway, as being I think of scenic roads having old trees that have been there for some of them a century or more. Big old maple trees or ash trees and so forth. That's what gives the character, the historic character to the roadway. If there are younger trees that have been planted more recently, how historic is that? I mean, I don't know.
well, in New Bedford, there's a lot of historic trees, but they die. And so there's very aggressive tree planting.
Replanting, well,
So
that's,
if you want to maintain the character, you've got to account for the fact that those older, beautiful, historic trees die or get diseased. And so you need a tree planting program to make sure you can maintain that character.
yeah, so you're saying if somebody has replanted some trees and then the next owner
Yeah,
comes along and wants to cut
hey,
them
I
we
want a
need to
better
protect
view,
it.
you know, I
Yeah.
want to cut them down for a better view.
down. Well, I'm all for that. I'm also think we need this is all about removal of trees, cutting of trees. What if somebody wants to plant a row of arborvitaes to screen
I can't
their,
imagine where you're talking
I
about.
know, where could you be talking? It's not in the public way, unfortunately.
yeah,
It is not
and,
about.
you know, completely obliterating what was a scenic view.
Right.
Yeah.
Every time I drive by there, I want to take a chainsaw. I shouldn't say that, we're recorded. Scratch that, I didn't mean that.
So, I mean, don't you think we need some, also if someone is proposing to plant
Yeah.
new trees along
Yeah.
that, within a scenic road, right, maybe we should have also require that they get approval.
I think that makes sense. I think the issue is that the law itself doesn't, it's all about removal. It's not about, what people are planting in the road layout.
So we can't do that because it doesn't conform to the, whatever it is, the state statute or whatever you refer to.
Right, so we can only regulate what is enabled by the scenic roads law.
So do they enable us to remove trees that are planted in the road layout?
You can, there just has to be a public hearing for it. And you can also exempt the town, if the town needs to do road work, that's something you can build into the bylaw to exempt the town.
And the utility company which cuts branches, that's not removal of the tree, right? That, they wouldn't need permission to do the continuing work along roadways, scenic roadways.
That's a good question that I don't
Yeah.
have an answer to, if utilities would be exempt from that.
It might be
I-
something that you want to add when they upgrade them to put them underground. If you had that underground bylaw,
Yeah.
they upgraded for all these solar facilities. If you look coming out of Tiverton, they put it all underground.
Mm.
So the other thing is talking about the town doing stuff in the road right away. For instance, along parts of River Road now, they've got a brand new machine that has a rotary thing on a articulating arm. And it doesn't have blades, it have chains, I think, that cut everything, but it shreds trees.
Yeah, they use that on 88 too.
And it is really ugly. They didn't used to do it that way.
It's a flail mower.
Yeah. And,
It'll take down 6-inch trees.
yeah, I know, so, I mean, if we had a scenic road designation, then, and if it was 3-inch trees or 5-inch trees or 6-inch trees, the highway department would have to come before us to be able to do that?
Provided it's not exempt
Any
in our
agency,
bylaw.
That's why you
Yeah.
exempted them.
any
It would
person or agency, so
Any-
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think we
that's
should
good.
exempt them.
I don't think, what'd you say, you don't think they should be exempt?
Exempted, yeah.
Me, I agree with you, totally.
Yeah, because what you're talking about, Jim, is absolutely horrendous what they do.
Yeah.
They've cut along Hicks Bridge Road and going up to the dump, or the recycle center anyway, that just destroyed these trees,
Right.
the branches of the trees.
The branches
And
and
leaves these sharp,
I mean, it
Splintered,
it
yeah.
rips the things apart instead of cutting them. They used to just cut the grass along the side of the road with those things.
So I'll look into reducing the diameter of trees to 3 inches and see what's also done in some adjacent areas, especially in places that may be a little bit more restrictive. Are there any other comments on the definitions?
What about the line of sight? You know how we get the line of sight coming out of a subdivision?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Is there something that you
So
can
to
put in there
exempt,
that if it is, if you can't determine whether it's on the town right of way or the private property, it's assumed to be in the town right of way?
mm-hmm,
So,
You-
because, without doing a survey?
right. You can, I have seen communities that have put that into their scenic
Please.
roads bylaw.
That would be very helpful.
So the answer to the question about utility maintenance of trees, keep them away from the utility lines, I think is covered, Michael, in the definitions, because it says the definition of cutting or removal, the felling of a tree. So if you're trimming branches off the tree, you're not felling the tree, right?
Fair, right.
If they said, no, the tree's gotta go for whatever reason, then they'd have to come to us, but if they're cutting some branches, they don't.
So should we say in the bylaw, just so regular people can understand it, what the town right of way means? That it's usually 10 feet either side of the paved.
Well, it's on a map. It may be 10 feet, it may be 20 feet,
Yeah.
it's whatever it is, but
Right.
it's in the deed.
Yeah,
that, you know, that's registered, so we
Yeah.
don't want to get a definition other than that.
right, and we'll talk about that a little bit at the end of this, about which streets to designate, but we were doing research on road layouts and trying to find what we actually have access to, and there is at least one or two that we don't have.
It says
Layouts.
this applies only within the right of way.
Yeah.
In some places, the right of way is probably not exactly.
Where the road is.
Many
Where the
places.
walls are,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the walls are on the right of way, sometimes they're on private property.
Well, some of the new walls that have
Yeah.
been put up in the harbor are
Uh,
definitely
in-
within the right of way. And so I asked Chris Gonzalez. And he said, I'll go look, and he said, no, those are out of the right of way. And they're obviously in.
They've actually made people take them down in subdivisions that were in the layout, so.
Well, I mean, how about on Sodom Road? That big farm field. They took all the rocks
Yeah.
that on that jumbled stone wall with all the bush, they took them all out, took them all away. And now it's just field all the way to the road. No wall.
Yeah,
anymore.
probably getting $4,000 a load. That's what they did.
So-
That happened on Horse Neck Road across from Fisherville Lane.
Mhm.
Our neighbor's farm, land on both sides of the road. They had, but this is years ago, they had all of those stone walls that lined the road removed. And I was driving through Milton and I saw a sign of a house that had just built a new stone wall and it advertised Westport Stone.
Well, we probably know where it came from.
I think that section on designation of scenic road and the definitions are good.
Yeah, for section 4, it's to lay out some of the parameters should someone want to petition for a scenic road
Yeah.
to be designated as a scenic road. 4.1 would give outlines the considerations that the petitioner is supposed to take into consideration when making that proposal. And then for procedures, it's just outlining that the Planning Board, Conservation Commission, and Historical Commission can make recommendations for a scenic road designation, and a citizen petition is also an allowable form, and it has to be approved at town meeting.
I have a suggestion in terms of addition to the list. Kind of two. I'm thinking of the pathway along from the foot of Bridge Street.
Oh, for the, sorry, we're moving ahead to the roadways.
Horse Neck, which used to be 10 feet wide, surrounded by beautiful dunes. And then DCR came in and destroyed it. And because it's, I think, DCR property, I would think that makes it a public way. And I don't know the name of that walkway, but they now want to make it 20 feet wide. I said to Jake McGuigan, what do they want to land a space shuttle on this? Why does that need to be 20 feet wide? And then I want to suggest that we modify the definition of stone walls so that a dune could be seen as a stone wall made up of very, very small stone. and nail them for removing the very small stone walls that
You
other
spent too
people
much
call
time,
dunes.
you spent too much time in Washington.
But mostly I just want to poke DCR saying, what do you guys think? Because it meets all the definitions of a scenic way, right? In terms of historic character, blah, blah, blah. It's got all of the, but actually I would suggest we add whatever the name of that way is.
Yeah. Bridge Street?
No, it's at the foot of Bridge Street,
Yes.
and then it goes along the in between the dunes, the
Okay.
Horse Neck.
I think that was at one time West Beach Road.
West
All the
Beach
way
Road.
along the road.
All
Yeah.
All the way
along-
along West Beach.
All along, and
Yeah.
it goes through the campground, and then it
Yeah.
becomes, the little stub of it that's left at the far eastern end is still West Beach Road.
Yeah,
Right, that
I
goes
think
in,
that would be
that goes
possible.
into the campground?
Yep,
West Beach Road.
West Beach
And
Road.
then
There are no-
actually, if you go in
He
there,
would say
it
yes.
continues. We did a road
That
race in
should
there
be a
years
scenic
ago.
road.
It-
We'd get a
The
lot of
campground.
support.
There you go, yeah.
And
Good
the
at that.
parking lots are connected by that road.
yeah.
Okay.
So a couple of things on 4.3, the list. It says crossroad. Which crossroad? We have two.
Actually, I was talking to Sean Leach about that today, and he pointed that out. The one that was referenced that Mark had recommended in a previous meeting was from Horseneck to Division.
Right.
And there's, according to Sean, that was, or well, I'll back up. That was one road that we had difficulty finding a layout for. Talking to Sean about it today, Sean Leach, he said that he does not believe that there is a layout for that road.
Which one? No,
Crossroad.
no, which crossroad?
Horseneck to Division.
Yeah, Horseneck
Your-
to
your
Division.
crossroad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did he mean? I don't know. No, there's no layout for it?
There's no road layout for it.
So it's not a town
Not-
road?
It is a town way, but there's no defined layout either that's been surveyed or even described in text.
That
Or
happens.
deeds.
Right.
That is not extraordinarily unusual.
It means it's old.
It just
Mhm.
means it's old.
Well, that kind of goes with John on trying to get into those archives over at the Marine Museum on some of the old Dartmouth maps and
Yeah.
stuff like that. It probably could be on an old Dartmouth map.
Could be.
So I would add in there River Road if you wanted to. I
River.
don't know what other people think, but I think that's.
Are there any parameters for where you want? Because River Road's fairly long, so are there any areas in particular that may not need to be in there?
The fork?
The fork? We gotta keep.
Well, the fork in the road is pretty.
Yeah, that's
That
historic.
intersection
Yeah,
of Old
exactly.
Harbor Road.
Yeah, I agree. We've got Old Harbor Road, so River Road.
River Road from Old Harbor to Crossroad, the other crossroad.
Right, the other, so I think I'd say both crossroads. Right now, they're sort of protected because there's big landowners on either side. But that's not gonna last forever.
So River Road from Old Harbor Road to Crossroad, and then Crossroad and the harbor? Is that?
Yes.
And you go
I'm just
with-
looking for,
It
Yeah,
goes from
yeah,
River,
kind
it
of-
goes from
I'm
River
all
yeah,
for
Road
it.
okay.
to the intersection of Howland and Old Harbor Road.
I think this will be interesting to see whether people want to come and take roads off the list or whether they want to come and add roads to the list or.
The other one I would add is Brayton Point Road.
Breeden Point Road, okay.
And you don't have to go all the way down to the end, but you'd have to pick a point to stop. But
We should have a map of the town with
Yes.
Yeah,
just coloring in those roads.
Yeah, we'll definitely have that for a
Yeah.
public hearing.
you
Now, I have a
have
question about-
West Bridge.
I've been asking for that for 5
West
years, a
Bridge
nice map that
Street?
you could read
Main
the
Street.
streets.
where's Sporches Way?
Are there any stone walls or trees on?
On where?
West Bridge, but it's a scenic,
Oh, West Bridge Street?
yeah. It
West
says
Bridge.
historic significance, it has that. Scenic beauty, doesn't have tree canopy, but a unique character of natural features. It's got that in spades. Stone wall, if you accept my definition of they're very small stones, yes. Culturally important locations as it relates to the town's historic, yes, absolutely. Public safety, I think that's why they're wanted 20 feet wide and consistent with other town
I think
policies
that's
and
all
plans.
DC on that weekend.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
all right.
I put it in there just if nothing else to get debate.
Well, make the whole of the DCR property a scenic way.
Well, that road, what did you say the name of the road?
West Beach.
West Beach Road,
Not West Bridge.
West Beach. I
So
think that's good.
I was gonna ask about Old Pine, last thing maybe, Old Pine Hill Road versus Pine Hill Road. You know, I think that, I don't know which one you're referring to on the ground, but if you take Horseneck Road
Yep,
to the Pine Hill gas station, convenience store, and you were to continue straight north, that becomes, I believe, that becomes Pine Hill Road.
So Old Pine Hill Road to
And
Pine
that
Hill
wanders
Road.
along the
that's
river.
that's the one that has views out
Yeah.
over the river.
Yeah.
Should
Well,
I-
I'm not sure, I think it's Pine Hill Road and not Old Pine Hill. Old Pine Hill.
Pine Hill is one at the top of Division, right?
Yeah, I think so.
We don't have Hicksbridge Road on here, should we?
Pine Hill does not come to Division.
That's
So
what it says.
Hicksbridge Road continues to Gidley Town Road in
Right.
Dartmouth.
Yes,
And there are 3 roads that go left off of it. First one is Pine Hill, the second one is Old Pine Hill, and
Oh,
then this White
White,
Yeah.
Oak Run
White, right,
Yeah.
you're right.
is the one that intersects with Division.
When,
I'm talking about the one that intersects
At the gas
at the
station.
gas station, yes.
I think that's Pine
And
Hill.
then goes north.
Yeah,
I think that is Pine Hill.
that is Pine Hill.
when I was a kid, my grandfather had a 1911 Maxwell, and he said, I bought this new.
Where is it?
I don't know, my cousin, when my grandfather died, took it. But what I remember him telling me is I filled this up with gas at the Pine Hill gas station. And every time I go by it, I think of, this has been selling gas for over 100 years. But we don't have Hicksbridge on here, should we? It's
Are
got,
there many?
it's got the handy house, for Pete's sake.
Yeah, I think we should, Hicksbridge goes across the bridge, so
Yeah.
Yes.
that's scenic over there, up to Pine Hill Road, or across the intersection. Goes all the way to Gidley Town Road, I think that's scenic.
Yeah. Get rid of all those cars on the repair yard there, infringe on the public way. No, just me.
By the time we have the public meeting, we're gonna need a bigger boat.
Yeah, we need a bigger boat. This is good, though. It'll be interesting to see how people,
I think the overrunner is, add my street.
Mhm. So the next section is just outlining that a public hearing is required, and that it's the responsibility of someone making any sort of disturbance to the stone wall or the trees on the scenic road, that they have to file an application with the planning board as well as pay for the advertising fee for the public hearing.
It should there be a penalty for doing this without getting approval?
Yes, at the end, there is an enforcement section, which I think is,
$300 a day.
that's just standard across the town's enforcement sections throughout the zoning bylaw. Then the last section before you get to the enforcement just outlines what the planning board is going to do during the public hearing. That the planning board will write a decision granting authority to move or cut trees within the scenic road layout. I put in here that a public hearing is not required when there are emergency conditions that necessitate disturbance to a stone wall or a tree within the scenic road layout. It just needs to be reported to the planning board within 24 hours of that work being completed. And then the board does have the option, has the ability to adopt more detailed regulations for carrying out the duties in the bylaw. So if there are other things that come up, there could be a kind of complementary document that the board would vote on that wouldn't have to go to town meeting in order for the board to promulgate those regulations.
So if we convince the town that they need to fill the position of tree warden, who would they report to? Would they be in this mix? Or would they obviously report to the select board like everybody else reports to the select board, or?
Don't they have like a list of the committee on who's like supposed to be a police officer, the highway?
Yeah, I think the tree warden is supposed to be under the highway division.
Well, but they had a thing on who's supposed to be on the board, though. There's supposed to be a board.
Mm.
Right, it's supposed to be 3 people.
Oh, that,
Maybe just
are you
2.
talking about the fence viewer?
No, the
Or is there
tree warden,
there's supposed to be a committee for the tree warden? Oh, okay.
a fence viewer too.
I mean, that one could probably be combined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they could, and they should have a modest amount of money to make sure that he's on the job, so.
Fence viewing and trees would be very closely related jobs.
Mhm.
I mean, Ralph's trying, well, I think they just upgrade some of the fees to operate the building department a little better. Maybe if he someday got an assistant in there,
Right.
it could help with some of these things.
Except he doesn't want an assistant. But, okay, we done with that?
Yeah, that's it. So if you have any comments that you'd like to send to me, please do so. I will redraft all of this and send it out to you. And I'll also try to get Sean to give me some comments since he's on the historical subcommittee of the climate resilience committee, so I think he'd be useful to bring into this. So once he sends me some comments, I'll forward that to you all as well.
Okay. So what's next on the agenda?
That's it?
That's it. Okay, I just want to relate something. So last week I went to the Affordable Housing Trust meeting and offered the help of our office to write an RFP or RFI for affordable housing using some of the existing high school.
Good.
And I came after the meeting and talked to Michael, and Michael said, well, you should really get the approval from the select board since they're the ones who have jurisdiction over the high school. So I did that. It went an agenda item last night at the select board meeting, and we had a long discussion about it. Mr. Thrasher had sent a letter to the select board, which I got a copy of maybe 10 minutes before the meeting. I didn't get a chance to really go through it. The end result is the select board took no action. There was no motion made to ask us to do it, and there was so no motion, no decision. Craig Dutra, who is the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust, that was a 100% vote to ask us to help them do that at their meeting. And Manny, I don't know if you want to add anything to it. You were there.
Yeah, I think my thing with that whole thing was we should embrace that for more options on what we're doing anyway. It's not going to affect it. I mean, it's not like what they were saying it's going to. I do think the idea of Council on Aging wanting to get in there right away is a good thing. It save the part of the building we got now and phase it like we thought we could do.
That would be part of the RFP. This is what we want in the building also, but if you can think towards putting some affordable housing in, we'd love to hear from you what your proposal
It
is.
only works for better, like even like a fully assisted, could be an assisted living facility.
Could be anything. It could be veterans housing, it could be workforce housing, senior housing, affordable housing. It could be a combination of, market rate housing and affordable housing. It could be anything. And we just finished our housing production plan. We really need housing. And I sent around a article from the New York Times of what's happening in Hollywood. And that's specifically what I'm afraid of, because they could do that here with 40 feet. They wouldn't have to keep to the 35-foot height restriction or 40 feet, whatever it is. They could build 20 stories. They could build it anywhere in town. And
The only thing I think that saves that is the affordability of building it. Once you start getting where you need to put elevators in and all that other stuff.
but the problem is the little subdivision we just approved and finally got approval, and we just signed the documents. They're already advertising the houses built on this property for $1.3 million each. I mean,
You heard Steve Maderas yesterday. I mean, that was kind of discerning kind of what those houses, how they've changed in 5 years. It's
they've almost doubled in 5 years.
more than double.
Mr. Chair, I think, I don't know whether Manny or Craig or someone can re-bring that up if they take no action. They didn't deny it or approve it, whether, it sounds almost like it was tabled, but I'm guessing that wasn't a motion.
I don't think,
They
and
took
Craig
no
would be the one to push for that, but I don't think it was to restrict anybody from doing anything added to it. We want to stop kicking this can down the road,
Right.
you know.
Well, I think what Shauna wants to do is to have it go to town meeting with whatever the committee comes up with. And I think, assuming it'll fail, then we're another year down the road. I mean,
Yeah.
it just seems crazy not to, it doesn't hurt anything to send out a thing, but I think they're afraid that by doing that, they're tying the can to the proposal that's gonna be there.
I mean, I'm even thinking, you know, when Council on Aging was talking about going in there, and, you know, they're really good at raising money. I mean, they got in there, I mean, they could also do fundraisers, you
Yeah.
know. I mean, I think we gotta get to them that we don't wanna look to do an override to build this thing. By phasing it and keeping the building, we can work our way. You know what else I found out today too, is when they put that roof on, the reason they put the new roof on was because they wanted to put solar on the roof. Which, I mean, I prefer seeing solar on that roof than on one of these farm fields. And I mean, you think maybe we could look into that and see what kind of a offset we can get by putting solar on the roof of that school? I mean, that was the reason they did the roof.
So at the meeting, you brought up, you weren't sure whether or not there'd be enough water for housing development on the property, or if there's a place that you could do a septic system big enough. And I'm just looking at the maps today, the town of Westport owns about 100 contiguous acres up there connected to the high school building. And in my experience in the harbor and with Nokichoke Village, people who know what they're doing can figure it out. And not just take everybody's, well, it doesn't work.
Well, some of those things over there, it's you know, it's like when you look at Swansea Mall, which Swansea got our sewer, and then it's going up to that mall, and that they had put a treatment plant in. The mall has its own treatment plant. That was done, you know, in the 70s when they built the mall. So yeah, they can put a treatment facility in. There's a couple of them, like this Long built, Jimmy Long was doing one in Dayton, an old golf course, and they did that, but they've been trying to develop that for, it's kind of like 15 years now, and the cost of doing that part where it's the sewer treatment plant is so high. I mean, that's what ends up making rents and everything so
Well,
expensive.
there's an interesting anomaly you bring up, probably doing it on an old golf course, right?
Yep.
So they did that up in Lakeville, and I've been up to this guy who runs a printing place out of his basement in this huge subdivision in Lakeville.
I think that was Bob
An old
Long's too.
golf course.
Same guy.
Same guy.
Yeah.
And so they're getting the water service. So they're in Lakeville. They're like quarter mile from the reservoir, but they're getting the water from Taunton. because Taunton draws out of there.
Yeah.
And just like Westport gets screwed with Fall River water, they're paying like 160% of what people in Taunton pay for water that's right outside their door. It's crazy.
That's actually in our town.
Right. Yeah. And so, anyway, there's a way to figure out how to do all that stuff, and I think it's much better. I think Jake said something about, well, let's give the committee the task of figuring out if we can put housing there, which is, to me, that's just another way to kick the can down the
Yeah,
road.
right.
Let's just get a RFI or RFP out there, see what comes.
Yeah, that doesn't
And
hurt.
it doesn't hurt. So,
Housing's the only thing that produces income that services debt. The plan they've got has an awful lot of people who want to use it, but don't have money to pay, including town offices.
right.
And housing's the only one that if they think the town's gonna do 60 million bucks, they're nuts. And then they say, well, we'll cut it down a little bit because we'll eliminate all the town offices going up there, which is one of the major advantages of the plan to begin with, was to get the town offices up there. So, and then sell these buildings, which could provide some money. So they're somehow not thinking about where's the money gonna come from to pay for this. Housing can generate that. Every time you create a housing unit, boom, it sells, it rents. And we need housing. In the article you sent around, Jim, about California, I think this select board and town meeting needs to understand that there are kind of two ways housing is going to get built. One, we are going to build it with control by the planning board and the zoning board and the health department, or it's going to be built under 40B, or it's going to be built by Andrea Campbell and the MBTA. But it's going to be built because there's a crisis in housing. And if we think Westport can just say, no, we're not going to build housing, we're going to stay with our 3% of affordable housing, I don't think that's realistic. I think the choice is we need to build it. We've got a great plan on housing production. And if we actually meet those targets, we're controlling what it looks like. If we don't, we're going to be looking at all kinds of 40Bs coming at us. And that's not the way to go.
And there's a huge area up in the Stod, and that's gonna turn into a 40B,
Yeah.
unless we figure out something else to do with it,
But
because.
we can't say, well, we don't want housing anywhere,
Right,
because that's not going to be tolerated.
and I think Michael was saying today that if you do some kind of housing, you can get money, if you do it with the smart growth. If you're,
It's the smart growth overlay.
yeah,
Which
if we have-
provides-
If we have a smart growth overlay, we can then, and we make it work, start doing stuff, we can get more money for the schools from the state. And that's what everybody is concerned with. Well, if you have more housing, you've got more kids. You know,
Maybe.
the population is aging all the time. Just look in the mirror, I can tell.
We're getting older.
We need more kids to keep the schools filled.
So, I don't know, I mean, so that's just what happened. And I was a little surprised at the reaction of all the members. But it is what it is, so,
You want a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair?
just a second.
Yeah.
No, I said, I can't imagine the town meeting voting an override of 48 or 50 or 64 or any of those numbers.
Well, somebody was saying that they're gonna try to whittle it down to 20. But then what, 5 of it's gonna go to demolishing half the place. And then you got 15, what are you gonna do with the 15 that's gonna be productive, that's gonna build something?
And you know, the notice of interest or the RFP, I mean, with the things that we found with it and what we want,
Mm.
I mean, it's only gonna help.
Yeah, Zach?
Yeah, I think that it should be a request for proposals.
Right.
And you state that the town's interest is having more housing, and there's an interest in providing space for the council on aging, if you will. If you want to say houses for the, offices for the school administration, whatever it is. But leave it to the developers to
Right.
propose. And they say, well, I can do this with this building, and I can provide this many housing units, or whatever. It's there. I mean, they know it's their prerogative to say, this is what we can do, because they'll crunch the numbers. And some of them might come back and say, even if it costs $2 million, $3 million to demolish the existing building, we prefer to demolish the building, absorb that cost, because we can save money by building new.
Mhm.
And we don't care if they want to build new housing and build a new facility for the council on aging,
Mhm.
and offices for school administration, great.
As long as they absorb the demolition costs,
Yeah,
doesn't matter, right?
yeah, because they may say the premium they're gonna pay to renovate that building to accommodate these uses may be just as high, if not higher, than the cost of demolition. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what the
But we
costs
have to
are.
be open to whatever suggestions they have.
Yeah, yeah.
I think with the cost of new construction today, though, that makes that prohibitive. And that's why we were thinking that the bones of that building are good, you know, I mean. A lot of the stuff today, you look at the box stores, they were only building for 50 years, you know? It's,
Okay, I would entertain a motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.